Well, folks, it's that fun time again. It's Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy Jamie Uyeyama, uh, proudly sporting his Steelers sweatshirt. There, he's all fired up about the big game tonight, and you know, I said he was here to rub it in, because Greg's Ravens and my Lions are not in. But hey, that's just kind of the way the Yama rolls, I guess. Is he's got to remind us.
It's been quite a few years since Pittsburgh's won a playoff game, so this might be the last time I get to wear this shirt for a while. So I had to.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. I'd be excited too if my Lions were in the playoff. They should have been in the playoff, and that did not happen. But it is what it is. All right. So we got lots to talk about today. It's going to be an exciting day for Irish fans. We expect a lot of fireworks today, and it looks like the first one just came through, and that is corner DJ McKinney from Colorado. Was just announced. If you are an ISD customer, you got the boom, and so that's one in the boat. We expect more to happen today. So we'll get to talk about that and here in just a minute. But we got to take care of some business first. If you're not a member of Irish Sports Daily, you can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up today. Lots going on right now with the portal and what's happening. And of course, recruiting is going to heat up real quick too. Coaches will be out on the road. New offers are going to happen. Things are going to get exciting here for 2026. Very, very excited about it. Also wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang, and Chicago's go-to for the best custom suits, shirts, and sport coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now's the time to refresh for your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket. ESQ Master Tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms both in downtown Chicago and in Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment and receive 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. Yama, I mean, today's the day that we expect some fireworks. The first one is in, and so we got to be excited about this. In my research on McKinney, sounds like he had a really good year and then transferred into Colorado, and things didn't quite go as well because that was one of the worst defenses in the history of college football. All they had to do, they played defense the entire game, it seemed like, because they couldn't get much going offensively, and defensively they kept giving up yards and points. So what do you know about McKinney, and how do you think he fits? What role would you feel that he is going to be in and when he gets here?
I think he's a stud. I think he's really good. Like, obviously he's spent the last 2 years at Colorado. He's started out at Oklahoma State. So he's a guy who's will be a grad transfer, I assume, too, because he's only got 1 year of eligibility left, right? So, but he's been a 2 year starter. He started, I think, like the last 23 games of his career. He's been he's long. He's 6'2", 190 pounds. He's got a ton of ball production. He only played 9 games last year. Like you said, Colorado didn't play good defense. I think one of the things is they just dropped off because they didn't have the same amount of talent. And the previous year, he was the corner opposite Travis Hunter. And obviously, if you're the guy opposite Travis Hunter, you're going to get a ton of targets. And he did get a ton of targets, and he was great. He was really, really good. They played in a very man-heavy scheme there in Colorado. So 50% of the time man coverage, which is basically top 10 in the country, you're playing man coverage, which fits perfectly with Notre Dame. He's a good man coverage corner, only allowed 42.9% completions in man coverage. He's played outside. He's an outside corner. I mean, there's a possibility that he could play nickel. So I don't know, but I think Notre Dame needed another outside guy. That they've played their starting corners too much the last few years, and I think guys have worn down, really. And even if you look at last year, where Gray obviously missed time and played hurt for a decent amount of time, Moore missed time, and then they had to play freshmen. And it's not like those guys couldn't be ready this year to play more, but it's tough when if like Notre Dame could have been a really bad position in 2024 if Leonard Moore wasn't Leonard Moore, like if he wasn't a true freshman stud. And this is a guy who's like a starting caliber guy right away. And 16 havoc plays in 2024, 3 interceptions. That was when he got targeted like a ton again when they were playing opposite
Travis Hunter.
and last year 7 havoc plays in 9 games. The guy's got a ton of ball production. He's long. He's a very, very good player. So I think that's a terrific pickup for Notre Dame.
It's interesting because we hear that there's some other targets that are out there, and things that are happening. New name kind of popping up is the Michigan corner Jaden Sanders, who out of high school, this guy was a pretty highly targeted, highly recruited guy. Somebody that I think he was a 94 or 95 on some of these high 4-star type of player. And sounds like Notre Dame is involved with him and trying to get him. And that's even knowing that they have McKinney in the boat. So it's interesting because their body types are very similar. He's 6'1". I think he was 193 he was listed at. Kind of a long guy. So does this make sense to take 2 corners like this? If that's what they do, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's one of those things where if you look at it, because he's younger, obviously he was a freshman last year. So I think it makes sense by the fact that if you look at, say, Gray, Moore, McKinney, those guys won't be back. Like, I mean, Leonard Moore is not going to stay for a 4th year. He's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick. So, and Gray and McKinney will be out of eligibility. So you're looking at, like, obviously they've recruited well. There's guys there, but this is a guy, they have to really like him. And he played over 300 snaps as a true freshman. Right. So, when you're doing that, at a place like Michigan, and you could say like a lot of stuff about Michigan and what's going on there, they still play pretty good defense. And,
they did, yeah.
And if you're coming in there as a freshman and playing 300 snaps, you're a pretty good player. And so and obviously you said like he's highly ranked. That's a guy that, really good, like multi-sport athlete, really, really, big time athlete. You're taking him thinking like, they must really, really like him. Like they must think like this guy can be a dude for them. And I think that to me, Mike, is one of these things where a few years ago, if he wouldn't even have been on the list because they couldn't look at a guy who was like an undergrad guy. And now they're really like have targeted a ton of undergraduate guys. And that's probably, I'm sure that has a lot to do with Marcus Freeman saying like, hey, we got to like be a little bit more lenient here. We got to look at kind of things to try kind of make it more attractive for him to stay at Notre Dame. And to me, that's great. Like, because you don't want to limit the list of like, hey, if your scouting staff, if your coaching staff really, really likes a guy, go get him. Right. So if they added him in there too, I mean, already, I think if you look at what they have there, Notre Dame probably has, I'd say, the best secondary in the country coming back. But really, that just kind of strengthens them more going forward.
It's exciting because they're going to have some options. And a lot of people say, well, why is this taking all the way till Monday to do this? And I think if people kind of understand the situation, I think Notre Dame didn't want to announce all this kind of stuff because they wanted their players back on campus, because there's going to be a lot of Notre Dame players that are like, wow, why are you taking a couple corners? We thought maybe you'd take one, but now you're taking 2, potentially. Why would you do that? And you want to be able to have those conversations. You want Mike Mickens to be able to have in-person conversations with guys that this may impact. And, we expect other names to be added to the roster today and hopefully throughout the week. We'll see how things go, but you want to have those conversations with those people in person, and you don't want it to be somewhere, where they're not in school. They're not, there's just a lot of opportunity for a lot of people to come in and poison the well if you were to do this last week. So I think that is the reason why we're seeing Notre Dame kind of announced this uh, today, or seeing names start to really kind of solidify themselves and actual signings and that type of thing happening today. So I just wanted to get that out there. It was interesting because one of the chat guys here asked about Armel Mukum, and he's going to be back now. It sounds, which is real good. They need big bodies like that. It was interesting because I've heard that Partridge, watched his film and actually really liked him. Really thought he had a lot of potential, and I think that's why Armel Mukum is back. Is their new D line coach is excited about him, and I know you've always liked him and thought he had a lot of potential. I wondered last year if maybe put on a little bit too much weight, and it's kind of hard to carry that if your body's not quite ready for it. It takes it. We knew that he was also raw. It was going to take a little bit of time, but man, if you can get a good quality defensive line coach like Partridge that believes in you, I certainly could see why you would come back. And so it'll be interesting. I do think Al Washington has done a great job. I don't want to speak for you, but I know what you said in the past. You're a big fan of what he's done, and I do too. But sometimes just a new voice or a new way of seeing things can really help a guy blossom. So maybe this is something that could be a good thing for Notre Dame. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking a bit about this with Greg last week too, that I think that's one of these things that it really, as much as when guys go into the portal and they're looking for a new opportunity, like a new voice, like you said, well, sometimes you get a new voice that at a new position coach, and it's nothing against, obviously, exactly like you said. I thought Al Washington did a terrific job, especially with the defensive tackles, just developing that group over the years. But I think that's something where with Muka, maybe he felt like, I'm stuck here. I don't know. Maybe Coach Wash thinks of me this way or something like that. That happens to a lot of guys, right? That happens to a lot of
Yeah.
guys. And I was, when I played, college football, I had 4 defensive line coaches in 5 years. So it's like you're getting a new voice there all the time, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's bad. But a lot of times, I just know from not just me personally, but other guys that I played with, they were kind of like, maybe disenchanted or whatever, and then all of a sudden, a new voice comes. Well, it's like it's fresh eyes on them. They can get a chance to prove themselves again, right? And so I do think Mukum has always had tools. He's always had tools. I think he was someone who came in, obviously, like you said, he put on a lot of weight quickly, and which was good and bad. But then also too, he hurt a shoulder, so he missed a good chunk of time. He also didn't come in as an early enrollee, so he had missed more time. He basically missed a full year, if you think about, compared to a lot of other people there. And he's someone who needed all those kind of extra reps to kind of get used to it, because he was an edge guy who was growing into a defensive tackle, very similar to Jason Onye in a lot of ways, where raw tools are always there. It's just level of consistency and whether you can kind of put it together. And I mean, to me, yeah, that is the kind of guy that I would think Chris Partridge would look at and be like, man, I don't get a lot of guys like this at Pitt. So with this kind of raw tools, so I want him. I want to get a chance to kind of mold them and see what happens there. So, I'm excited to kind of see, how he does when he's coming back. And obviously they need, like you said, they need the bodies, they need competition there. And I think it would have been a bad thing if, there's a guy that possibly could break out still, was to leave. So it's a good thing that they're bringing him back.
Yeah, I think so too. And he does have the bigger body that you're looking for. Yeah, it seems like Notre Dame's done a good job trying to find some guys in the portal, but they haven't been able to find even the big giant bodies, the 300 plus guys. Even a guy like Francis Brew. How do you pronounce it? Brew? I don't know.
Brew, I think, yeah.
Brew. Okay, so a guy that we think that Notre Dame has a really good shot at. And I love the guy. I like him on film, certainly, but not the 300 plus guy that you're looking for. More kind of in the Heinisch mode, but I think he'll get bigger this year. I think he'll probably, be 295 when it's all said and done. He's got to have some time in the weight room and develop his body too. And I think he has the ability to get bigger than Heinisch, but kind of that similar player. So I do think it was important to make sure that you have some bigger bodies. They do have Sean Sevillano. They do have Davian Dixon. We've heard really good things about Davian Dixon recently, and their thoughts on him and how he's developed. So they have some bigger bodies in there. Would they like more experience? Yeah, probably. I know that they're still out there and they're still trying to, land a guy like James Smith from Alabama, who I think is a really talented player and kind of the bigger body that you're looking for there. But we don't know where that's all going to go with Brew, whatever. I think that he's the type of guy that could be a very exciting, type of guy. Somebody can give you some pass rush, somebody who can give you some tackles for loss. What do you think on this guy?
I mean, I'm would be thrilled if they land Brew. I just think he's the kind of guy, especially because they lost Heinisch, that he kind of slots right into there. And like you said, he's not a bigger guy. He'll probably get a little bit bigger, but he's never going to be huge. I don't think it really matters. That's not his game. He's not a guy who's going to be.
Aaron Donald wasn't 310 pounds,
Yeah. I mean, obviously the guy was muscles on muscles, and Bray was not quite that, but he is similar to another guy that Partridge coached, Elijah Cansey, who became a first round pick. And I'm not saying that Bray was going to be a first round pick, but like he already is a very good player, and he's going to be a very good player for a while. And I'm a really big fan of him. I was a fan of him when I was preparing for Pitt, for when Notre Dame was going to play Pitt this year. One of the better pass rushing interior linemen in the country this year, 23.3% win rate. That was sixth best out of all the Power 4 defensive tackles this year. He was the guy who was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. So even though he's not 6'2", 280, he is explosive, a big time explosive athlete. He had a 675 squat and a 475 bench as a true freshman. So that is actually a lot like Aaron Donald, right? And 33-inch vert. Like, I don't know how people understand that is not normal for anyone like above 280 pounds to have that kind of explosiveness. And
that's Yama. That's Yama.
Almost me.
Yeah, that's it's not quite up there that high yet. Yes.
Okay. But he's got like just great lateral quickness, a really like perfect kind of one gap penetrator, a guy who can like contort his body and like get to the quarterback too. So, and I think his sack numbers and all that kind of stuff, he had good TFL numbers and stuff, but his sack numbers will go up as he plays in a better defense. They didn't have like a really good pass rush around him. So to me, he's a guy who he would be your interior guy who could be your third down guy, replacing kind of what Notre Dame has lost there. And I would think that Notre Dame fans should be thrilled if they land him.
And you got to know Marcus Freeman's going to enjoy landing another guy from Pitt if he can.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
as will all Irish fans.
Yeah, they all will. Thanks, Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be a nice get, and hopefully that happens, and we're excited about that. Another couple familiar names that are out there. Keon Keely, we feel like there's a very good chance he's going to be part of this. How does he fit? Because he's kind of he's taller certainly, but kind of the same size body. How does he fit? Is he a 3 technique? Where would you play him?
I mean, he's only played edge at Alabama, right? I do think he's 6'5", like 282 or whatever he's listed at. He's probably can be like 290 plus 300 pounds if they want him to be. But the one thing is, I don't know if it's kind of a little bit like Bryce Young this year, where Bryce Young, he rushed inside, but you can tell he wasn't as comfortable rushing inside as he was rushing on the edge. And Keely, I could see the same kind of things. He's not that guy that, at least I haven't seen from him, that he could like kind of muck it up there and play, as as a guy. Like, I think it would be a transition for him.
Yeah.
Obviously he hasn't played that much. That's the thing, right? He's been there 3 years, just hasn't played that much ball because he's kind of been stuck behind people there. And he did show like a lot of like potential this year. He blocked the punt versus Eastern Illinois. He had 3 sacks, 2 in the final 3 games. One in the SEC championship game, 1 in the first round of the playoffs against Oklahoma. So he was like playing his best ball at the end of the year. He obviously, like Mike, we've talked about it. The guy has traits off the charts. That's why he was a 5-star. But we always knew he was going to be a guy who wasn't going to come in right away. And it was going to be because it was going to be a transition for him. And it might have been that he needed to be like Nick Saban needed to stay there or something. Like they needed that kind of thing to be in that, or he maybe should have went to Notre Dame the whole time. And that was like a better environment. So maybe this will be a better environment for him if he ends up at Notre Dame. And I don't know, but I really think that is one of those guys that if you're going to add a guy like that who doesn't have like the production, I mean, he better have like these traits that you could see, like he still has potential to do something. So that is a guy worth taking a flyer on to me. Right. And who knows how it'll work out, but there was like, obviously like JJB, like Javonte Jean-Baptiste was a guy.
I was going to mention him. Yeah.
But he had played more at Ohio State, but he was not a guy who was fully formed, and he had been there 5 years. He showed plenty of potential as a pass rusher, but didn't really like put it together. Wasn't a good player versus the run. He was like made a massive leap at Notre Dame and then became an NFL draft pick and was a great player for Notre Dame. So if you get that guy with Keely, who's got 2 years left, let's see what he is this year and then next year, because that might be a guy who, if he hits, he can help you win a championship. He's that kind of talent.
It's interesting because I look at the situation with Keely, and sometimes guys just need a new thing. They just need a new thing. And you mentioned Jean-Baptiste, and I remember watching the kid, and I think for him, that's what he needed too. He needed 1, somebody to believe in him, 2, a new opportunity. And he just made up his mind and said, look, the window is closing, right? I don't have any more time to mess around with this. If I want to get to the NFL, I have to do it now. And so what you're essentially getting is what I hope is somebody with that mindset, but as a replacement for Burnham, but with way better, way higher potential than even Burnham has. And if you can put that together and coach that up, he could be a tremendous addition to this. And so I'm excited about it because I as you mentioned, towards the end of the year, he started to make plays. And Jamie, he was making plays against good teams too. It wasn't like, he was making plays against some bad teams. He was making plays against good teams. And so, maybe the thing is switched in his head. Maybe that's the thing. And I'm excited because he could really turn out to be that kind of guy. I'm reminded of, Bailey from Stanford, who went to Texas Tech, and, he was a pretty good player at Stanford, but turned it up a big notch at Texas Tech and became the type of guys that a lot of people thought he would be right out of high school. So these are the kinds of things. It's just a new opportunity, and you got to be really excited about it. I'm really excited about it. Quincy Porter, the Ohio State guy, in the portal. A lot of people think Notre Dame has a really good shot at him. I watched this film again, from high school. This is exactly the kind of guy you need. I mean, this is it. This is missing. I mean, I'd say he's, his potential is easily at Malachi Fields, easily. He'll need to develop a little bit. I don't think he's there yet as far as more of a finished product than Malachi Fields was, but he'll have plenty of opportunity. The only question is the injury, and you're taking a little bit of a risk because it sounds like, there was a knee thing. I'm sure Notre Dame took a look at it to find out whether or not they needed to do any surgery or anything like that. I don't think they would have taken him if they felt like they had to go in and do any surgery. They must feel like things are going to, um, you know, work out on their own and see what happens. I just saw right here, speaking of Porter, we
Well,
just got a boom. He's
there you
in.
go.
He's in. So we know he's part of the class right now. So excited, very excited about this because I think he could be a really good player. I loved him out of high school. I really did. And he went to a school that likes Notre Dame, is very much kind of a similar environment. And so I'm excited about that. I really am because I think he's going to have the right mindset when he walks in here. And he's prepared for whatever it is academically as well. So, very good pickup. We just got to hope his knee is healthy. It would be wonderful if he could go through spring practice, but that may not be the case. We'll just have to see how it goes. But this is the kind of body that they needed to compete with Micah Gilbert, because Micah Gilbert is only one guy. You know, you do have Jerome Bettis Jr. there, and he's going to be competing with these guys too. But they don't have anybody with his kind of height and size and really kind of athleticism at this point. Thoughts here on Porter?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about obviously Mylan Graham as a possibility there, and we'll see what happens with all of that. But really, he's a field guy. He probably phase on right away. Um, it's not nearly the same need as boundary. Boundary
No.
is a need. Like that is a need in terms of like you said, they need at least somebody to compete with Micah Gilbert there. I believe they absolutely needed that. I don't think they need to grab like a ton of guys in the portal at receiver, but boundary was the thing. And I can't think of it, like you said, taking the injury off the table because we'll see what it is and all of that, right? Hopefully everything's all good there and he's healthy and all that. But he is clearly was a guy that, I mean, I loved him as a prospect. I was disappointed for Notre Dame when he ended up, choosing Ohio State and didn't give him more of a look because of exactly what you said. I thought he was going to be a guy that was like perfect, exactly kind of what they needed. And he is in that kind of field thing. I had him a top 30 prospect in the country that year. And he's obviously only been 1 year. He's still got 3 years of eligibility left. So even if he doesn't right away, there is some deal with the injury, he still could end up being a dude for Notre Dame. But just talking about a guy who's like 6'4", 210, size, just so he's got the size, but he plays big. Like he plays big. He can go up and get it. He's got more juice than I think, definitely I thought from his like junior to senior year, you saw him like be more explosive. And I think if he was healthier as a freshman, he would have played more at Ohio State. So it's not like he was one of those guys. Like he still played 5 games for Ohio State this year, even though he was banged up. It's hard to get on the field at Ohio State at receiver. Like they already got dudes. So, I think, the potential there, that like the ceiling there for that guy is as high as anyone they could have gotten out of the portal. And even if you say like, well, Marsh, like, Nick Marsh or the kid from
Rutgers
Strong,
yeah.
if those guys came in right away, you'd be like, okay, well, what you got there, but their ceiling isn't as high as Porter. It's not. Like Porter has a chance to be a much better player, much bigger impact. So, yeah, and I like that he got for multiple years. And I always thought like he was always a kid who I thought was like a fit for Notre Dame. Like obviously, went to like Bergen Catholic and all that too, right? So it's not like he wasn't a fit for Notre Dame. So I think that it could be really, really good.
Excited about it. That's a nice piece there, certainly, and we'll see what happens with Mylan Graham. I mean, a lot of people are like, I think that a lot of people thought it was gonna get done, and then so many people left Ohio State that, I mean, somebody's got to start there, right? And I'm sure Ohio State is trying to stop any sort of damage at this point. And look, They were paying Quincy Porter. They were paying a bunch of guys, that have left, a bunch of NIL, and now that that's all gone, I'm sure they're going to Milan Graham saying, "Hey, look, we got more money here. We could give you, and by the way, you're comfortable here, and you don't have to go to class, and you can take online classes and all this kind of stuff." And so I don't blame Milan Graham if he goes back to Ohio State, because it's a pretty good opportunity there right now with everybody that has departed. So sometimes it's just really difficult to grab somebody like that, because the way the wheels move and everything that's happening in the portal, just kind of like Mookum, all of a sudden you have some opportunities there that you weren't sure that you had before, and now you do. So, I'll be surprised if Graham ends up in the class, but if it isn't Ohio State, I do think it'll be Notre Dame, just based off of things that I've heard. So we'll have to see how it all unfolds, and we'll go from there. The last one, we did talk about Sanders and what he brings to the table. Do you think that this is going to be, if they do land Jaden Sanders, do you think it's going to be, is he somebody that can come in and push to be the number 2 guy? Do you think he'll be a threat to a guy like Mark Zachary? Do you think he'll be a threat to a guy like Dallas Golden? I mean, what do you think he will end up doing if and when he signs with Notre Dame?
I mean, I think he's someone who will come in and compete to be like in the 2 deep immediately, like to play right away. It'll be interesting to see what they do, because he hasn't played nickel. Like, he wasn't a nickel for them. He was another outside corner. Obviously, and maybe they still will add somebody else. Like, obviously, there's still some time here. Maybe they'll still add somebody else at nickel. But what it does is, if you said, like, you weren't sure about where things were going forward, or you were going to pick up, now you can say, well, Dallas Golden, you are a nickel. You are going to be our nickel. Like, this is the thing. And we're going to just absolutely just put everything into him being that guy. So I think that kind of opens up that opportunity there for, like, Dallas Golden to be a starter at nickel. So I think that that's something there. Also, too, like, it'll be interesting to see if, like, they want to move one of those guys inside there and play them as like a slot corner and see where they're at. Obviously, like, Leonard Moore is, you saw him like line up in the slot against Mekhi Lemon and handle it pretty well. So it's not like they don't have guys who are capable of doing it. It's just, it's a different transition. So if you got to do that. So, but it's good problems to have when you have this many talented corners. Obviously, they're bringing in, like, Chaston Smith and Kari Adams, who could immediately jump into the mix right now. But I think the way I look at it with Sanders is basically, Cree Thomas leaves, you just replace him with a guy who you upgraded. Upgraded. This guy's already played 300 snaps. He was higher ranked. He is a guy that you've kind of upgraded right into that, and that, so it's like a trade-off there. And then you get to mix and match and see where they're at. See, obviously, one of these freshmen could compete at nickel too. So they're just loaded in the secondary, Mike. Honestly, like, we're both super duper high on Ethan Long and what he can do. It's going to be tough for Ethan Long to play. Like, Ethan Long might be someone who they could play at nickel a little bit too, right? To be honest, like, because he was a guy who played a lot of, like, at that nickel spot in high school. So I think the secondary is just loaded. I can't imagine a better secondary in the country.
You got Pouncey, you've got O'Brien, you've got a lot of guys who could do a lot of different things, and they're athletic enough, I think, to play that position if they wanted to. And gosh, with that kind of size, holy cow. So it's a good option to have. And I think you brought up a good point about Cree Thomas, but you also need to mention Carson Hobbs. And I think Mike Mickens can go to his corners and say, look, we had Cree and we had Carson, both bounced. I had to do something. We have to make sure we have enough people. So, I love the freshmen. I think they're going to be talented, but I don't know if they can play. I watched these guys on film playing against college players, and I got to make sure that we have enough people here. So I think it's an easy sell. I do. I'm sure people will be disappointed, but that's what I think is going to happen. Great.
I had a
You got something
question
to add,
on
Greg?
I had a question on the Sanders thing for you guys. We were talking about the replacing Creed Thomas with Sanders because he's a true freshman. Would you say that this is kind of like replacing Creed Thomas with like second Dallas Golden? Like if you just look at his recruiting profile and like how many snaps they both played last year, because that's kind of how I see it. It's like if you were able to bring, like if someone was able to bring in Dallas Golden, obviously that's he's still on Notre Dame's roster and that's a good thing. But I'm just kind of comparing the snaps and the type of player that they are.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's basically, if you think of that and Zachary, because they all played like that kind of amount of role.
Yeah, because Dallas Golden played 300 snaps last year as well.
Yeah, and you just don't get that. Like that is very rare to have three guys in the same class that have played that much. And like I said, earlier, Gray, Moore, McKinney, those guys are all be gone. So you want to be set up for Notre Dame wants to be in a position where they're competing for a championship every year. Well, you just help strengthen that by adding this guy to those other two that you already have there. And then obviously all the freshmen that we mentioned too, like they're in a really good spot. And they could also be in a position too, Mike, where Schuler is obviously going to be gone after this year. I think there's a good chance Tay Johnson is going to have too good of a year that he might not be gone.
I think
so they could have to replace a lot. So it's very smart to get another guy in there because you want to have all these. You want to be in a position where you don't have a big drop off there in the secondary. And obviously, like I said, they're going to be great this year, but you want to be in a position you are still elite in 2027. And I think adding a guy like this kind of ensures that.
Yeah. It's very, very exciting. They've just really done a really good job at corner and at safety. So the last we know that they're working on a kicker. We'll see what happens with that. I got to believe that they'll have a kicker soon. I don't know if it'll be today or later this week, but I got to believe that they'll have a kicker. We know that that's something they've been targeting. And then you have a couple of defensive linemen from Alabama, James Smith and Russ Thaw. It's interesting because, they want to be a package deal, but I just don't know if Notre Dame needs Russ Thaw at this point because they got Keon Keely, and I'm not sure that they need somebody like that at this point. So I like James Smith. I mean, he feels more of a need for sure. What do you think on these two?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Smith is the guy that they absolutely need. And Smith is someone that I think is the rare guy that you're adding that could end up being like a very, very high pick still like next year. He could be like one in and gone as a high pick. And I think he's someone who didn't quite reach his potential. Obviously, he's a starter at Alabama, but he hasn't played up to like that kind of like 5-star kind of status. He was like, a guy had in the top 50 in the country and all that. Like he can do that. And Rissaw has actually got that kind of talent too. Like he's a freak athlete and all that, but he's played even less. They don't necessarily, they need Smith way more. And to me, if like you get Smith, that is something that where then whatever happens with the Anye situation and whether he's able to come back or not or get that extra year, then that's gravy because that is someone there. You get him and hopefully Bray. Like I can't even think of two better guys that they would get at the position there because you get that one guy who's like a stud passer, and then the other guy who is just a massive human being who you would stick in there. But Russaw, yeah, he is more to me, he's more of luxury. I still think though that he's got incredible traits and like has a chance to still be a really, really good player. But yeah, to me, he is very much in the Keon Keely mold of like although he would be more of like, I know they don't split it up into Viper and whatever, but he is more of like a weak side end. So I guess you could kind of say that. And
that's why I think that might not be a bad idea because I mean, you got Logan Thomas who hasn't been big enough, right? And you know, when you look at behind Boubacar Traore, you got some young freshmen, but you don't know whether they can do it. You know, you hope that they can. But I think it's probably a money thing. It's like, how do you afford all these people? And so, but I'll say this: this is the time to spend. This is the year to spend, right? Because you have the schedule next year to where if you get enough players, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good situation. And guess what? If it doesn't work out with some of these guys in the portal that come in, they don't have to be here the following year. They don't have to be, right? This is more insurance. As the way I look at it, I think it's more insurance that guys can go down. Boubacar Traore's been hurt, and again, you have some young guys that can rush the passer, but there's just nobody that's proven behind him. And as much as I think Logan Thomas has an upside, he doesn't have the body to hold up against the run. And you can't play Boubacar all the time, and you're not taking Boubacar off the field on third down. So when is Logan Thomas going to help you? And that's kind of the problem that I see there. So I hope that they find the money to make it work. These guys want to play together. Could you imagine getting 3 D linemen from Alabama? I mean, that would be quite the haul. And again, this is why we kept saying when everybody was panicking, is like, look, I know everybody's upset and it wasn't an ideal start, but all that matters is how you finish, right? That's all that matters, how you finish. And they've got a couple guys already. We expect Mueller coming, and if you could land a Smith and a Russaw on top of what we think is going to happen, I mean, that's pretty darn good close. You know what I mean? It really would be. So we got to hope that they can figure this out. And to be honest, I think the need is really there, especially for Smith. But I'm not so sure it's not for Russaw either, because I do think he's got a better body to hold up. I have not, I'll admit, I have not watched him against the run, so I can't really say, but I think he has the physical traits to better do it than maybe some of the guys they have on the roster right now. We'll have to see how it all unfolds, but I really hope that they make it work somehow, because that would really bolster. It'd be the one thing that we're kind of the most concerned about. If you could throw Smith, Breu, and Onye in it interior, you could add Keon Keely, and then this guy as defensive ends. You got to be feeling really good about your chances, and so to me, I just hope that that's what happens, Jamie. Anything you want to add?
I would say that if they added those 2 guys, like you said, I do think they do. It's not necessarily like 100% a need, but it would help. It would help to land Russaw. And I think if you ended up with those guys, and if all the guys we talked about today, if that's who they close with, like they close with, they get Sanders. So they add that. They got that in the secondary. They get Breu. They get Smith. They get Russaw. And the kicker, right?
Yeah.
And a kicker. That I can't even think of any better situation. Like prior to, like, if we're thinking, okay, this would be the ideal. That's kind of the ideal. Like I don't even know how you would even compare it. Like even if you're thinking about like the names that were like being thrown out early, I don't think the kid from Penn State who's going to Tennessee, like Gilliam, I don't think he's a bad player. You take Smith over him any day. Like it's not even close, right? So it's one of these things where it would be massive, I think. And exactly like you said, like if you're going to overspend and do it, like this is the year, because that puts them in a situation, I think, where I don't know about, like, if you could go into the season thinking any team in the country not just like, oh, in the Midwest or whatever, because Matt had reported that it was like Notre Dame's gonna have the best roster in the Midwest this year, so better than Ohio State. So like, which says a lot, obviously. I can't think of a team with a better roster in the country on defense for sure than Notre Dame. I don't think so going into next year. If that's how they finish.
I couldn't think of anybody, to be honest with you. If you could finish with that, I really don't. And that's what's so exciting, because I think offensively they're going to be really good too. They just are. We just need some pieces to fall in place at offensive line, and this thing's going to be fun to watch. It's really going to be fun to watch. All right. Got a few questions here we wanted to get to before we end the show. First question, what do you think ND can do better for next year's portal? And again, I think that this is what you have to look at. As we mentioned, you got to close strong, and I think that they will. I do think landing a guy like Smith is really, really important. If you can land that guy, that's important. But I do think that there was certainly a slow start, and I think part of it, was you just don't know how the situation is going to go. This was Mike Martin's first kind of real year at doing this. Last year Chad Bowden had most of this already done before he even showed up. So all these conversations, all this stuff was already kind of wrapped up really before he kind of got in the position and could do. So I think sometimes when you get in the NFL, there are ways that stuff happens. And to be honest with you, I think there's a lot more truth in the NFL because you've had so many long relationships with agents and with players and things like that, that you've developed a lot of, goodwill amongst each other because it's usually the same people that you're talking to every day. So, but in college football, there's a lot of these kind of, not real agents. They're, businessmen or trainers or things like that. And you just don't know who is telling you the truth and who is not telling you the truth. So to me, I think that was part of the issue, just not knowing how quickly this kind of unfolds. And I think that they'll be better prepared for that next year. And you learn from your experiences. I think that that's something that needs to happen. All right. Mike, how much backroom deals are done that some of the players they bring in are for show, so nobody knows who they really want, and how many players do we miss out on because there are no online classes? I don't think Notre Dame's bringing in anybody for show to kind of throw off anything. I really don't. I do think that there were a couple guys who came in that didn't have offers, and I think Notre Dame wanted to kind of kick the tires to see, body. Do you fit? Do you fit personality wise? Are you as tall as you tell us you are? Are you as thick as you tell us you are? Are you as injury free as you tell us you are? And, I don't know. So I think that that's part of it. As far as how many you lose by not online classes, I think it is an impact. It really is an impact. And I think it hurts you in portal. I really do, because it was certain kids, because that's what they're used to, right? And I remember showing the Alabama situation on Irish Sports Daily because they had the video of it, and they showed, okay, right here is your dorm. This is where you stay. Right next to it is the academic center, literally right next to it. You had to walk maybe 30 feet to get to the academic center. Then right next to that is the football facility, right? You don't even have to get in your car and drive anywhere. It's all right there. And Jamie, you were a college student. I'm sure you remember what it was like driving around trying to find a parking spot because you had to go to class. I mean, it was, at least for me, it was a disaster. If you weren't there at the right time, at the right situation, you couldn't even find a parking spot, and you got to be at class, and you got to walk through the snow, and you got to, just do all this crap that you don't want to do. And you got to, I remember I used to not even drive because it was such a frustrating thing. So I'd have to bundle up and walk to class. So these are, inconveniences that kids don't want to deal with, and they don't have to deal with at other places. But a lot of kids are like, you know what, this is better for my opportunity. This is better for me to get to where I want to be in the NFL. The best news is Notre Dame has very quality coaches, and they've developed a lot of players that are starting to get in the NFL, and kids are seeing that. And so I think that helps kind of neutralize some of that. But some kids just they don't want to work that hard. Thoughts to you, Jimmy?
I mean, of course it's going to have an impact, just like how the stuff with like the dorms, and you got to stay in the student dorms and whatever, and they don't have a dedicated football like living space or whatever, like that. All it does make an impact. And I'm sure like that's one of the things with like Mylan Graham, for instance, where I mean he couldn't get into Notre Dame out of high school, and I mean he could barely get into Ohio State, and now he's done well at Ohio State. And if going to Notre Dame would be a big change in terms of what he's asked to do in terms of school, so that has to be daunting for some of those guys, right? So I do think that it plays an impact. It has an impact, and I don't think it's. I mean, there's a reason why the slogan is "Choose hard." Like they wouldn't be selling it. They're trying to tell you right away, like, "Hey,
it's hard."
But the rewards are greater, and that's the whole thing, right? And that's what they that's what they sell, but they have to sell it that way because it is harder.
It is. It's just the reality of it. But I do think it does have its advantages too. And I'll tell you one thing that I don't think a lot of people think about, and that is if somebody's willing to put forth that effort and work that hard, they're probably willing to be more of a team player. They're probably willing to sacrifice a little bit more. They're probably willing to buy into the culture a little bit more. They're smart people. They're committed, dedicated people that are willing to do this. And I think that that's why Notre Dame is having so much success on the field compared to some of these other teams that, live in the portal and they can't seem to put together the right combination. It's because the culture isn't what it needs to be, and I mean, I got to give Cignetti all the credit in the world. He's done a really good job with that, considering all the portal stuff that he's got to deal with and trying to get everybody to get along. And, it's tough. It really is. And the disappointments, I mean, there's going to be a lot of Irish players that are disappointed that there's new names being added because now that's just somebody else I got to compete against. And so it's a tough thing, but I think if you get the right people, it can be a very good thing. It can help build your program. And so we got to hope that that's the case moving forward. All right. This is a good question by CB Irish. How would you compare this team or this year's team to last year's? I know it's difficult because you don't have Love and Price, but how would you compare it? And again, I think it just depends. If they land the guys that we think that they got, I think this will be a better team. I do. I think there may be they may struggle to replace a couple guys, but I think overall the depth and the frontline starters I think will be better and more experienced. And then you'll have a more experienced quarterback. You'll have a defense in their second year, and we've seen Jamie really through all the defensive coordinators we've had recently. Second year, they just usually tend to get better, especially if you have a good coach. And we think Chris Ash has shown that he can do the things that need to be done, and now is calling kind of the game and towards the talent that he has. And so I think it's a better squad. Your thoughts here?
I mean, we'll wait and see when it gets done because you can't really like speak on it for sure until it, but I mean, I think it's trending in a way that it is going to be a better roster. I mean, to say that it's not going to be different. Like, I think Notre Dame's fine in the backfield. They don't have to add a back to be great at running back. But I mean, Jeremiah Love and Price were literally the top two backs in the country.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be a drop off there. But the thing is I think they're going to be better in other areas. And I'm excited about some of the other stuff. I'm excited about James Flanagan this year and what kind of player he's going to be and all that. And I think there's a lot of guys like that on the roster who could really break out too. So I think they're in a good spot.
I want to see what a guy like Tate Johnson does, right? Because he's already really good, but I think he's going to be even better this year. I really do. I want to see what a healthy Christian Gray looks like again, because he's been really injured. People don't realize he's been very, very injured. And I think if he can get healthy, and you've got all this depth now at corner, you got to be excited about it. And look, your quarterback's going to be a lot better. I think the offensive line's going to be a lot better. Even though you're losing Schrouth and Wagner, I still think they're going to be better. I think, tight end, I think Eli did a really good job, but I think Flanagan, plus, some of the other things they got there, things could be pretty darn impressive there. Mike Denbrock knows his personnel even better in year 3. And you've got wide receivers. You got Faison and Greathouse back, and now you've got Porter, and you can add some more guys that were sophomore or freshmen are now going to be sophomores that are exciting. I think a guy like Keon Finley can come in and play right away. He's got the ability to play right away. So just there's going to be more options, and I'm excited about it. Really excited. All right, let's see. This is an interesting question. I've watched the Miami the last 2 games, and I've been impressed with their running game. Their offensive coordinator shows real patience and sticks with it, and it pays off late in games. What do you think? Would this approach help the Irish? Well, I think that there's a lot of things in play there, and you have to understand when you're Mike Denbrock, the only way you're going to attract elite corners or quarterbacks and elite wide receivers is you have to throw the ball. All right. You have to be able to throw the ball, and you have to show these guys that you are committed to it and you want to run the ball or throw the ball. And so could you give Love and Price a few more touches? Yeah. But if your goal is to be a complete offense and attract, we've seen what one great quarterback can do to an offense. We're watching it unfold right now in CJ Carr. If you want more of those types of guys, you got to throw the football. And if you're just handing it to Love and Price all the time, a quarterback's going to be like, well, why should I go there? And by the way, they don't have any receivers either. So in order to get to where you want to be, sometimes you have to do things to get there. And I think that that's what Chris Ash's plan was with the defense last year. Yeah, we're not very good at zone, but we got to get better at zone. The only way we can play better at zone is to actually play it. You can't get better at doing something unless you're actually doing it. And so I think that that's part of it, as much as whether somebody's dedicated to the running game or not. You have to look at the big picture and what you plan to do, and go from there. Just wanted to announce Keon Keely in. Looks like they're kind of going every half hour here. So now he is in, and again, big pickup. Excited about it. But your thoughts here on the run game and all that situation, Jamie?
I mean, it's one of these things where people just watch them during the playoff and just think like, wow, they're really doing this. It's like, a lot of it is game flow. Like, if you watch them the whole year, they didn't do they weren't running the ball like this for most of the year. In fact, it was probably like one of their Achilles heel. And like Fletcher has gone up a level in the playoff for them. And that's been a big thing. I think one of the things, if you look at like, say, Notre Dame, 2024 Notre Dame, that's who they were. They were like, we're going to lean and grind it on you, and we're going to run the ball. And obviously that was Riley Leonard was a part of that too. And that was their game. And that's who they were. But then they couldn't open it up. Well, last year, Notre Dame was a team that could do both, because when they played USC, and USC was like, hey, we're going to play too high. We don't want you beating us. We don't feel good about our corners. You can't throw it deep on us. We're going to keep everything in front of us. So Notre Dame's like, okay, we're just going to run it down your throats. And then they did. They ran for over 300 yards against them. So I think it's one of these things that it's like part of it is game flow. Part of it, I think, is when you get into these games at the end of the year. I mean, I'll give total credit to Carson Beck, because I thought he would like melt away in like at least one of these games, and he hasn't yet.
I did too.
Maybe Indiana will be the game that it happens, because it'll be the best defense they faced. But I think one of the things that has really helped Carson Beck is that they have the O-line, and they've been able to like lean on the running game and basically run. They've run it on everyone. They have run it, and in the fourth quarter, they have won and been the more physical team. And that's the thing. And that's been the same thing. That's what's interesting is because that is the secret. Even though as good as Mendoza is, he didn't have to throw the ball that much in the first two games because they've just ran it down Alabama and Oregon's throat. So it's kind of two teams have been the same kind of thing, and they've been more physical than each other. And I think that's probably the matchup in the championship is like line of scrimmages. That'll determine, who wins the game.
Absolutely. And this is what the Yama and I have been saying since we've been doing this. It's like skill talent is great, and you want to get as much skill talent as you need as you can. But a lot of teams have great skill talent in the playoff. The team that wins it is who controls the line of scrimmage. And that's what happened to Notre Dame last year against Ohio State in the championship game. They lost the line of scrimmage, and a lot of people thought that Ohio State was going to throw the ball all over Notre Dame, but no, it was the running game that hurt them more than anything. It was their running backs making some big plays and really their quarterback scrambling, and that hurt them more than anything. So Miami has a very good O-line and D-line. I still don't think it's going to matter. I don't think anybody's going to beat Indiana. I really don't. So we'll see what happens. All right, another question here. Here's an actual football question I've been trying to get answered since the Stanford game. I noticed that in the Stanford game that when ND was in short yardage situations, they blocked the running plays differently than I'd seen all year. It looked like more zone blocking schemes. It's been a while now. I didn't go back to look. Sadly, we get the chance to see it again. Jamie, did you notice this too? And what are your thoughts?
Oh, I think Smooth Diver asked this before, and I think we answered it during a Hidden Hustle. I don't know if he maybe or I can't remember. Maybe we didn't answer it. I didn't think it was sorry, I don't know if it was Smooth Diver who asked the question, but it was whoever asked the question. I didn't think it was that different from what they were doing all year, to be honest. I thought it was just they just ran it better, and Stanford stinks. Like, to be honest, like I thought that was the thing. I didn't think it was noticeable what they were doing. They were just more intentional about running it there rather than just like it being like hugely different schematically.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Guy wants you to predict the starting offensive line for next year.
Everybody knows my favorite question. I don't know. I don't know, but I'll say this. What you were saying, Mike, about like, I mean, obviously Billy Schrauth was just an absolute stud this year and was great. I do think they're going to be better up front, even though they're losing him and Wagner. Who, like, those are two guys that, multi-year starters, because I think whoever's playing right tackle, there's a good chance it could be an upgrade over Wagner. And my guess is Lambert will get the first shot at playing right tackle. They'll move him out, and if hopefully Charles Jigsaw is healthy, and he'll slot right into the right guard, because I think they want to play those two monsters beside each other, and then obviously we'll see what happens at left guard. I mean, like center, Otting and Craig, whatever, but like, and we'll see with Craig's health and all that. And Knapp, I imagine, will still be the left tackle. People might want to move him again, but I think had a really good year at left tackle. That'll probably be there. And then it'll be a battle for that left guard spot with Absher, who did play pretty well at the end of the year. Obviously not as good as Schrauth, but we'll see. Now he's got more experience. Maybe takes a jump. And then right now you can look at like Will Black. I don't know about like Matty Augustine getting in there and all that. Like, I think those are guys that have a shot to really like kind of push there. And Will Black, I mean, he might be the left tackle for Notre Dame one day. He looked pretty good at guard in the garbage time. So I would be
very
and here's
interested in him there. And this is why I like that idea, because I want him playing next to Knapp at guard, And the reason why is I want him to see the intensity that you have to play with if you want to be an
Yeah.
elite left tackle, right? And you want to be next to a guy like Knapp because he is as intense as you're going to find when it comes to the run game. And I think Black will eventually push out there, just like we think that Lambert will on the other side. Um, and so just playing next to somebody like that, that their mentality is I want to kill somebody, that takes it up a whole notch. And I don't have the question mark of whether Black wants to be physical. He's shown me that enough already. But it's kind of like, when you get into those wars in line play, you want the guy next to you getting fired up and killing people because that motivates you too. And so I really hope that that's what we see. But look, Absher, like you said, he's played well at times, and he's got the body already. And if he can put a few things together, who knows? Maybe he's going to be the guy too. We'll just have to see. All right. Yeah, somebody wanted to ask about the NFL and Freeman. Look, at this point, we're not going to talk about it. It is this is going to happen no matter what, and unless it's something that really I think is an issue, I just don't think it's a good situation to be continue to discuss and all this type of thing. I mean, Marcus Freeman appears to be clearly in fold at this point because he's hired a bunch of coaches. They're signing a bunch of guys at this part. Everything seems to be what we think it is, and that is, hey, he's here for next year, and then we'll go out, have a great year, and then see where the chips fall where they may. But I just don't want to get involved in any of that and that type of thing. Another question. CJ Carr played this year on easy mode with Love and Price in the backfield. Only USC opted to stop the pass, and it was one of the worst games, one of his worst games. With Love and Price gone, do you think Carr is ready to challenge for being the offense's primary option? And where does he need to improve in order for the offense to be the championship caliber? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's not like other teams didn't opt to defend the pass. They just couldn't. So I think that it's different. I also think that if teams are going to play that same way that USC did, Notre Dame's going to run for 250, 300 yards every game. Like, I just think that it's not a way to play Notre Dame. I don't care if it's Love or Price in the backfield. Aeneas Williams will go for 150 and like that.
He just showed you could. He just showed you could. Yeah.
And the line, and also too, like we just said, like we think the line is going to be better. So there's all of that. So I think, not that I don't think that Carr, that wasn't a good game for him, but he didn't have. That was really the only game all year where you were like, I got a little bit of questions about CJ Carr now. I want to see how he responds to this, and he responded and played great the rest of the year. Yeah. So I was really hoping that we'd get to see him in the playoff and see like, okay, they need a drive here. It's been since like week 2 that they didn't, or week 3, against Texas A&M, that he had to get like, here's a drive you have to have and all that, where he's throwing the ball. But that has something like we didn't get to see that, and that is something maybe we'll see this year with him. So there's still more of that he kind of needs to prove. But I mean, I can't really think about like, I don't want to call it easy mode because there's been other guys who've had, great, things around them, and they haven't done and been as accurate as him. So I think it was really good.
All right, last question here. When is Rudolph going to turn the raw talent into Notre Dame into a dominant line that can reliably run the ball in short yardage situations?
Well, I see a lot of this stuff about like, because there was another question I saw, Mike. I know you didn't ask it, but it was like another question about like, don't you think he hasn't done a good job? And it's like, well, you know what? Charles Jagusah has played like no games. Like, he's played 1.5 games over the last 2 years, and people would have said both years that he was like, well, he's going to be Notre Dame's best lineman. So he's gone into those years without the best guy. He had this year right here, where like Well, Billy Schrouth is missed the game, and then the previous year he's playing on one ankle, and they also had Ashton Craig has been out for this time. Like, he has not had a healthy line. Like, he hasn't had close to, and I know injuries happen, but it's not like guys are like, oh, you miss like 2 games or a game here or there. It's like, no, they've had guys like out for the season, like key guys, where they've had to go down to like their 8th guy is in somewhere there. Or Anthony Knapp has to start as a true freshman at left tackle when no one was counting on that too. So I think, I mean, I don't think the line was great. Obviously, they weren't as good as they were the year before, I think. But I think a lot of that had to do with, okay, well, Charles Jugosaw is supposed to be the right guard. Well, Gerby Lambert, now you have to be the right guard because we don't have it, even though you haven't had any experience there. You got to step in there. And that is kind of thing when people say, like, oh, well, they could have used Pat Coogan, and for sure they could have used Pat Coogan's leadership and all that kind of stuff, but they really needed Charles Jugosaw at that right guard spot.
Yeah,
more in that game, just specifically, like that would have made a bigger difference. And so I think hopefully Charles Jugosaw is healthy and can finally get healthy and play up to his ability, and they have their kind of full group there, because I think the talent is there for them to be great and be one of the best in the country. And we'll see how it goes. But I really think that, I think he's done a pretty good job overall. And if hopefully the cards kind of, work out for them where they're in a position where they can have that best group.
I think you hit the nail on the head too, in that, they were on their 8th offensive lineman both years. I mean, they were. If you consider Jugosaw was supposed to start, I mean, and you're down Craig and you're down Billy Schrouth, I mean, you're on your 8 offensive linemen. That's just the way it is. Miami didn't lose a single guy all year, not O-line or D-line, right? If Notre Dame had that, they probably would have been in a pretty good situation. The other thing that Miami, or that no other team in the country had last year, is nobody played 2 playoff teams the first 2 games of the year. So when you're playing a guy in Gerby Lambert, you didn't expect to start because you thought Charles Jugosaw was going to be the guy. You get Ashton Craig back for the first time, and he's kind of doing things, and you're just kind of getting together cohesiveness. It's difficult for that to be a good thing, especially when you're going against the talent that we know that Miami has on the defensive line. It isn't just that Notre Dame struggled to move the ball on Miami. Most teams did the entire year. And certainly when they're playing well, like they did in that first game, when they're playing with that kind of intensity, Miami's tough to beat. And, A&M, that wasn't on the offense. That loss was not on the offense. I wouldn't say the offense was perfect, but they scored plenty of points to win. That was not on the offense, the reason why they didn't win that game. And so, do I think it could be better? Yeah, sure. I'm sure it could be, but it's still a tough situation for any offensive line coach. They've just been very unlucky with injuries, and hopefully that'll happen. I do think depth is getting better, and I think they're starting to stack some bodies there, that your number 2 won't be as big of a drop off as maybe it was in the past. But you got to get all these guys coached up, and we'll see what happens. All right. Anything you want to add, Jamie, before we close down the show?
No, I'm just excited about, obviously Notre Dame's up to a pretty good start today. Sounds like there's a good chance they're going to keep it rolling. So I'm excited. I think people patiently waited for Notre Dame to kind of make an impact in the portal, and I think it's going pretty good so far today.
Yeah, I think they'll get a couple more today, maybe more. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I'm excited about today, and then I'm really excited to see what happens with James Smith and Russ. I think that would be. I would feel really good going into the season if they could land those two. So, of course, the kicker I think is a very important piece too. Got to make sure you get that addressed. All right. That's going to be it for the show. Look for next week. We'll be back on. Also wanted to mention, subscribe to the channel. If you don't check us out on YouTube, do find us on YouTube, search for Irish Sports Daily. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and then like the videos, share it with your friends if you like it. So we greatly appreciate it. Greg and Jamie will have a lot more on Hit and Hustle this week. So be looking for that. And we will talk to you next week on Power Hour.